Philadelphia 76ers is they tried to play two different things. They tried to play contender, and they tried to play protect Joel Embiid. It wasn't doing Joel Embiid any good. And this goes back to what I've talked about numerous times on this network. Why did they let him play in the first place? Why was he on the Olympic team? I mean, we looked at it last year in the playoffs against the Knicks. The damn kid was on one leg.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on Sports.
Welcome to the Early Line live right here on this Thursday morning, all around the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. A lot to get to here up until 11 a.m. Eastern time. We'll go around the association from an 8-game slate on a Wednesday evening, live right here on a Thursday. We'll look at the top of the charts, both in the Eastern Conference and out west. The two teams that have already reached 50 wins in the NBA, now moving past that 50-win benchmark. We'll also be joined by Mark Zinno, as he'll talk a little bit of everything. NFL news early in this offseason, 6 days away from the start of the official league year around the National Football League. I'm sure some college hoops handicaps out of Zinno as he gets ready for postseason and time to go dancing around the month of March. A lot to get to here still, DRS, on this Thursday on the Early Line.
Yeah, we'll have a good time with that. Again, a lot of hot topics sitting out there in the marketplace. The NFL spending big-time money only to get even bigger once free agency actually begins. And you talk about that NFL calendar, which truly is 365. Just when you think you have some downtime, think again. The topics get hotter and hotter in the offseason, which is incredible. And then we'll talk some NBA action, which includes the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Rodney Dangerfield of the NBA. They get no respect.
That's a really good reference there, DRS.
Yeah,
very, very good. We'll talk about Cleveland and where that best bet might be out in the Eastern Conference to start off our third and final hour as well. But let's go to the Cavaliers last night. 12-point home favorite, looking for 12 consecutive wins. They get exactly that. 12th consecutive victory. Do not cover as that 12-point home favorite, but do knock off the Heat 112-107. Maybe a little tighter than we expected, but anytime you stack up 12 consecutive victories, that is a good sign for the Cavaliers. A total of 221 and a hook. Barely stays under, despite the Cavaliers being the highest over team in the NBA this year. Donnie, they do not cover. Total doesn't go to the over. Maybe not their most impressive outing, and yet they are 52-10, and they've won 12 consecutive games. That's the NBA's best team in Cleveland at 52-10.
Yeah, even wins, like back-to-backs are hard to get regardless of who you're playing at that point or even playing on the home or away. They still were able to get that job done. And also, you might have thought this was supposed to be a little bit easier, even though I said Cleveland's on a back-to-back. No Tyler Hero in the lineup for the Heat. Where are they actually going to get their scoring from? They put up 107, which should have been good enough for a total in the game because I always like to say, Cleveland, you can book them for 125 plus every single game. They didn't have their best offensive performance. They didn't get the cover, but they did win the basketball game, which is most important. Just continuing to stay ahead of the Boston Celtics there with their 52nd win of the season. Quality win? Yes, it was. Why? Anytime you're on a back-to-back and you pick up a victory, that's a quality win.
Also a change of venue back-to-back. Not an overly far trip for Cleveland to head back home, but they were in Chicago on Tuesday night, a 22-point win over the Bulls. So 12 consecutive wins for Cleveland. At 52-10, they are already the first team to clinch a playoff berth within the NBA. They have an 8-game advantage over the Boston Celtics for that top seed in the Eastern Conference standings. Only a matter of time before they clinch the 1 seed as well. And Donnie, when it's not your best offensive night and you still get 6 guys to score in double figures, including the newly acquired DeAndre Hunter off the bench and our producer Joe Friezo's high school buddy Ty Jerome, who poured in 12, that's always a good recipe for success. Miami now 12-15-1 against the spread as an underdog. So 52-10. That's the record for the Cavs. 2 teams have won at least 50 games. In fact, 2 teams have won more than 44 games so far this season in the NBA. Cleveland out east, Oklahoma City in the Western Conference. Make it win number 51 as the Thunder head into Memphis and pick up a big win. 120-103. They cover as an 8-point road favorite. A very lofty total of 252.5 does stay under. Donnie, a very sneaky 41 points out of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because we almost expect 40 plus, heck, maybe even 50. He scores 41 last night to lead Oklahoma City to a 17-point road victory.
Yeah, no Chet Holmgren either. We talked about this line, which was really heavy to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but thought that was the right side of it just because how dominant they've been. That's a number 1 seed on the road against a team that's probably going to be either a 2 or a 3 seed in the Western Conference, and you dispatch them by 17 points in their own building, which is really impressive. And SGA just rubber stamping that MVP trophy right now. 41 points, plus 19, 10 of 10 from the free throw line, 14 of 25 from the floor. Seems like he's getting better every single year. I remember just a few short years ago, it was like, I don't understand. This guy scored 30 points every night, but they don't want to be good, so they rest him like half of the games just to make sure he can't continue to dominate. Now he's allowed to dominate with a quality supporting cast, and look what they're doing. 51 wins already on the season.
8th game for both teams since the All-Star break. Memphis has lost 4 straight. They have not covered in any of their 8 games since the break. OKC has now won 5 in a row. They have won 7 and 8 since returning from the All-Star break, but they have only covered 4 times. You might be thinking, well, that's not all that great. They've been booked as an 8-point favorite at bare minimum in every single game, a double-digit favorite in 6 of those 8. Also first under for the Thunder since the All-Star break. They had played over in 7 consecutive entering last night. So let's take a look at the 2 best teams in the NBA. Again, both teams with more than 44 wins. And both are at 51 for OKC and Cleveland, the best record at 52-10. But Donnie, there's a very different story in how the odds makers look at OKC and Cleveland. Oklahoma City, a double-digit lead for the 1 seed in the Western Conference, and they're a minus money favorite to win said conference crown. Cleveland, 8-game lead over the reigning champs in Boston. They will be the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, more than likely, like 99.4% for that to happen, and yet not booked as the minus money favorite at plus 220. Not even the favorites to come out of the East. It still remains the Celtics.
It is, but also look at that price point dropping for the Cavaliers. The 10-1s, the 9-1s, the 8-1s, even the 7-1s here, where they were available just a few short days ago, now down to 6-1 and priced appropriately because we keep on asking, well, is Cleveland going to fall off and just lose out and there's a chance for the Celtics to gain that number 1 seed? That's not happening here. reality is starting to set in. Shrewd moves by Cleveland, including getting a new head coach here to set the tempo for that team and picking up guys like Hunter. It all looks like it's playing out. That collision course between the Celtics and the Cavaliers is going to be so much fun to watch, and maybe the advantage goes to Cleveland. Why? Simply, they're a great team and great at home, and they'll have home court advantage.
Donnie, we have asked a few times, when are the odds makers going to catch up with the Cavaliers? When are we going to start to see that regular season success match up with the playoff outlook? Donnie is right. It is certainly starting earlier in the week, plus 280 to win the Eastern Conference, now plus 220, a 7-1 price to win the NBA championship just a few days ago, now shaved off by a buck. Let's head out to Los Angeles. The Clippers, big home win last night against a streaking Detroit team who had won 10 of their last 11. And the Pistons booked as a 4.5-point road favorite in LA. Enter James Harden. A vintage performance, a 50-point performance, the first of his time in Los Angeles, as the Clippers win outright as a home dog, 123-115.
Houston Rockets James Harden just said hello, and I'm in the building. 38 minutes, 24 shot attempts, 6 of 13 from the three-point line, 16 of 20. So James Harden getting the calls, getting to the line, 50 total points without Kawhi Leonard and also my guy Will Powell. That's a good win for the Clippers. I didn't expect it.
Will Powell? Norman Powell.
Oh, my
we'll talk more about the NBA
Powell.
up next. Who's Will?
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid, we get you going all around the NBA. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say what hour it is, so we'll just recap the NBA from a Wednesday night. Oh, it's hour 2 here. On a Thursday, he is Donnie. I am Ben. 50-point performance from James Harden last night as the Clippers win 123-115 at home in L.A. against the streaking Pistons, who have still won 10 of their last 12, but a big win for L.A. In fact, DRS, just the second win for the Clips since returning from the All-Star break in 8 games. They win outright as a dog, their first cover in any of those 8 games. In the 50 points from Harden, vintage, if you will, his first as a member of the Clips, the 24th of his NBA career. That's the 4th most 50-point games all time in NBA history. 1 behind Kobe Bryant, who is now 7 behind Michael Jordan, who has 31. And everybody look it up at Wilt Chamberlain, who has 118 50-point games in his NBA career.
Yep, a couple more to go here, James Harden. You'll be fine here. But also understand this. This was a tough spot here. You blew that large lead on the road going up against the Phoenix Suns. You come home and you say, all right, well, Kawhi Leonard's not going to be there. A couple other guys are down and injured, and I'm going to have to play great on a back-to-back as an aging veteran to drop 50 points in a much-needed win against a quality opponent in the Detroit Pistons. I'll take that. 54% as a team from three-point range, 55% from the floor as a team, and 85% from the free throw line. They needed everything to get past the Pistons, and they got that last night.
More action around the association. The Sacramento Kings, trying to solidify a play-in tourney spot in the Western Conference, entered last night's game in Denver, winners of 4 in a row, and got 35 points out of DeMar DeRozan. And yet the Nuggets, with a balanced attack, pick up their 40th win of the year, 116-110. Closing number on FanDuel, a little bit higher than 6 most of the day. It was at 6, so either you got to push a Kings cover, and Denver certainly did not cover a number yesterday. But the Nugs, DRS, have won 12 of their last 15. They are still playing really good basketball at this moment. Big home victory yesterday to stifle a hot Kings side.
No, it was, and it was a great victory, and we broke this game down yesterday morning, which, in the NBA, things change throughout the day, but that line on the show was 5.5, 116-110 final, which I did like the Denver Nuggets in this one. Good win for the Nuggets in elevation. Wasn't all that pretty, and you take a look about, just another triple-double here on the streets for Nikola Jokic. Nope, didn't get the assist here, only had 6 of them, but did have 15 rebounds and 22 points here. We'll see how that stacks up for the playoffs, but also in elevation, where do the legs typically get tired? In the second half, in the fourth quarter. Did you see that final fourth quarter score? 32-17 Denver. That's how they got the win.
Yeah, absolutely so, DRS. And a total of 235 staying under. The Kings have now gone under in 5 straight. Denver under in 5 of their last 6. We talked about a vintage performance out of James Harden. Similar out of Russell Westbrook. 25 points last night, including 4 triples. Denver's leading scorer also had 5 boards, 3 dimes, 2 steals, 2 blocks. We know Russ can still fill up that stat sheet. So when you look at the Western Conference standings, Denver 40-22, 1 more win, but also 1 more loss than that of the LA Lakers at 39-21, riding that 7-game win streak, hoping for 8 in a row tonight on this Thursday. Both teams, though, trail the Oklahoma City Thunder by 11 games out west. The Lakers slightly a better win percentage at this moment, so they have the nod for that 2 seed in the Western Conference. 2 meetings in the next 2 weeks between the Nuggets and the Lakers that could determine postseason positioning out west. And Donnie, we have said it's a difficult time, right, to back the Dallas Mavericks. It's a difficult time now to play for the Dallas Mavericks without AD, without Kyrie Irving. And the Mavs are going to be booked as an underdog, we would think, a large majority of the remainder of this regular season. They were an 11-point underdog last night on the road in Milwaukee, and that line was very telling. The Bucks win by 30, 137-107. Dame scores 34. Giannis scores 32, and Milwaukee cruises to a comfortable 30-point win, and an 11-point favorite at home does cover.
Just a few short weeks ago, you might have said this game was star versus star power, big two versus big two. Well, one team had a big two, as you pointed out, Lillard with 34 and Antetokounmpo with 32. No big two, no big one, nobody in the lineup for the Mavericks as they get beat by 30 points. Hey, Klay Thompson stepped back there with 28 points, but that's not going to be enough. Where now you're looking at this season saying, is it even important for us to make a run to stay in the play-in rounds or just get out of it, keep the draft pick, and move on to see what you can salvage it? But we haven't seen a team like this or a fan base that's been so disappointed, and rightfully some self-doing by the ownership group, but also bad luck on top of it. Trade your superstar franchise player away, a 25-year-old global superstar, to get some more superstar power, only to have that said superstar get injured and your current superstar get... It doesn't make any sense for Dallas. What a lost year.
A 2.5-game lead for the Mavericks right now for the fourth and final play-in tourney spot. That would be the 10th seed in the Western Conference over Donnie's Suns. We'll see if Phoenix can make that rally. But just to say, the Mavs, even with Kyrie in the fold, or the game with Anthony Davis, the Mavericks have often been booked as an underdog since dealing away Luka Doncic. The odds market basically laughing at Nico Harrison. Dallas has now been an underdog in 11 of 14 games. Since that Luka Doncic trade, they had covered in 5 of their first 6, booked as an underdog. Now just 1-4 against the spread in their last 5, and more than likely going to be an underdog more often than not the remainder of this regular season. We'll dive even deeper into conference tournament week at the mid-major level on the other side of the break. But let's get right to it. 2 more tournaments underway today, and 2 great ones, DRS. The gauntlet that we know and love in the WCC, the Sun Belt inspired by the West Coast Conference tournament bracket, that begins today. And a wonderful tournament in St. Louis known as Arch Madness. We've got some early afternoon basketball, 1 p.m. Eastern time for the Missouri Valley Conference and Arch Madness.
Every day that we go from here on out, the bigger conferences start to step up into the plate. And now you're saying, like, well, Donnie, you guys have been talking about a lot of teams we've never heard of. You've heard of these teams now, so get ready. It's here, people, and we're here to watch it play out.
And these could be big ones, right? Because the teams that won the regular season in these leagues projected to get into the big dance. A couple of teams looking for an at-large bid, and maybe some bid stealers as well. Missouri Valley Conference WCC next.
Looking for an edge in betting basketball? Injuries can make or break a game. Get insider knowledge from Dr. David Chow and the team of experts with Sick Picks at Sports Injury Central. We reveal hidden health-based advantages the sports books miss. Our doctors provide insights, and our algorithm tells you who to bet on. Spreads, props, totals, in-game bets, Sick Picks covers it all. Go to SickScore.com and sign up for Sick Picks and use the promo code SportsGrid for a free week today.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern.
Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid on this Thursday. 2 more conference tournaments at the mid-major level begin, and we get even deeper into the Sun Belt Conference Tournament. A-Sun returns to action with semifinal games on this Thursday evening as well. And it's not even just evening, DRS. It's Thursday afternoon basketball. Arch Madness, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Our first men's game of the day. Southern Illinois, a slight favorite in St. Louis against Indiana State. Not quite the Indiana State team of a year ago of Robbie Avila and what they had, but those guys are in St. Louis now. Not truly like currently in the state of in the city of St. Louis like Indiana State. The Sycamores, those guys, Josh Schertz and Robbie Avila, went to St. Louis University. I'll stop talking. So let's get to the actual odds that we see for the conference tournament. Drake, 27-3. First year under Ben McCollum. They have the best record in the league, a program record, 27 wins in the regular season, 17 in terms of their conference outlook, the most they have ever seen. And the Bulldogs booked as the favorites, DRS, to win Arch Madness. There is some conversation if Drake comes up short, because there's a really good Bradley team right behind him and a really stout Northern Iowa team, that if Drake does not win the automatic bid out of the Missouri Valley, can they be an at-large team? My hope would be yes, but we shall see. These are the stakes that we have now even deeper into conference tournament week.
Yeah, it's fun to watch it play out. And again, these two teams that play each and every game, obviously, they're playing on a neutral court site. The one thing that you like about Drake is they're really good and they're really efficient, but also, Ben, extremely slow, like glacier-paced snails play slow, which limits the possessions in games. So if you can get them out of their rhythm, that could help. But there's one thing that usually happens when you run at that slow pace. You need to be ultra efficient, and they are the best basketball team on offense in that conference. And also, how about this? They get to the free throw line more than anybody else. So you're slow. If you overcompensate on defense, you get bored and you foul. That just feeds right into it. I'll tell you one team that's a lot of fun that you might want to see even betting against or betting for. It's Illinois State. Extremely good on offense, but horrendous on defense here, which is a great matchup, which you usually like to bet on overs or props or totals to get involved. A team that can get after it one way and not stop anybody on the other. But it is clear Drake is the best team in this conference. But again, that Virginia-style slow pace here, you usually play in some tough games. That could cost you in the end of it. Not saying it will, but it might.
364 out of 364, the adjusted tempo for Drake. It is the slowest at the D1 level in college basketball, and yet in conference action, the most efficient offense and most efficient defense around the MVC. Bradley is the 2 seed. Bradley is a very good offensive team, something to keep an eye on for them in this tournament. And Donnie, one of the first games today is that team you see with the 5th best price, Illinois State, corresponds to their seed line in Arch Madness. The bottom team in the tournament is Missouri State, the 12 seed. And yet, Illinois State, only a 5.5-point favorite in their MVC tournament opener today against Missouri State. It feels almost like a trappy line to begin conference tournament action.
Yeah, it feels like an under, too. You're looking at both the adjusted tempos of those two teams here, certainly slow as well. But you're right, you're going to get some upsets. These are some teams that understand, like, hey, YOLO out here in these streets, because we lose, we go home and don't advance. You're going to get some crazy endings and also a lot of pressure basketball. You have to win if you want to get in. These kids know that.
They will, that being Illinois State, allow you to take the 3. 44% of their opponents' field goals come from deep. Missouri State, 36.3% from 3, one of the better shooting teams within the Missouri Valley Conference. Of course, we have talked about the gauntlet that is the Sun Belt Conference tournament bracket. That originates from the WCC. But Gonzaga, Donnie, the team that has often dominated said conference, is not the 1 seed. In fact, that's St. Mary's for a second consecutive year. Plus 150 for the Gales. They're not the minus money favorite. They swept the Zags this year. I already bet St. Mary's earlier in the week. I think that's a little bit of a disrespectful price for Randy Bennett's side.
It is. And also, look at the matchups and why have they beaten them twice? You look at Gonzaga. They are ultra efficient down low inside the three-point line. You know who defends you better than anybody else inside the three-point line? It's St. Mary's. That gives them problems. When you say, we want to do something, the team goes, no, we're the best at stopping what you actually like to do. That'll give you problems. I agree with you. Give me St. Mary's as the underdog here. We're just used to seeing Gonzaga as the prohibitive favorite every time in the WCC tournament, and they are the favorite once again. Doesn't mean they're going to win it. I'll take St. Mary's to win the bad boy.
Those two teams, by the way, the top two seeds in the WCC, only have to win one game to see each other in conference tournament championship game because of how the gauntlet is designed in the WCC. Some NFL news with Mark Zinno up next.
Which is a great place to be. Are you in the locker room, like you giving like the Any Given Sunday Inches Al Pacino speech? Are we there yet?
Oh yeah, I think we've been there. We're gonna have a long talk with Rob today about the 99-199 issue from last week. Like I just don't get how he is still employed. We gotta talk to ownership about that one.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on sports betting, is it possible that New York will actually lower their taxes? That's surprising.
The question is, of course, well, what sports books could go there? I mean, we're already at 9 that are the biggest ones out there in the market. So, I mean, who are you really missing?
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember when everyone was upset about NIL? You know what NIL did? Make sure Cooper Flagg wasn't playing with the G League Ignite. That's good for us. That's good for college basketball. When the best players are actually playing college basketball.
You're going to get battle tested. And it doesn't matter, Kevin, if you're at home or on the road. If you don't come ready to play in the SEC, you're going home with an L.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
We were expecting our first guest of the day being Mark Zinno. We believe he is here but experiencing technical difficulties at this moment. So we hope he can join us very, very shortly. I believe Mark is here. I actually have no idea now. Yes. When the bit becomes reality, DRS. When the bit becomes reality.
Ice cream on
Mark
me.
Zinno, a man that is always professional and very on time. Thanks for joining us here on this Thursday on the Early Line.
Always great to be with you guys. As long as I keep you guessing on your toes and just keep the levity throughout this program, that's what I'm here for each and every week.
Reliability, Mark. Availability. The best abilities out there, my friend. And don't you ever forget it. We will start with a football focus early in the offseason around the National Football League. We'll talk some college basketball with Mark Zinno as well, as we are now in the month of March. I've got an idea. I've got a good joke I'll share with you guys at the break. Anyway, let's start with the quarterback market, Mark, in terms of NFL free agency. Not many quarterbacks that are all that robust in this free agent class. But of course, we'll start with one that is always very notable. After being released by the New York Jets over a week ago, Aaron Rodgers has his football future ahead. At the end of 20 years in the NFL, at the age of 41, does he still want to play football? All indications are yes, Mark. So then the question for you is, what are some possible landing spots for Rodgers?
Would it be crazy if he did the same thing Brett Favre did and ended up in Minnesota for a year? I mean, in reality, J.J. McCarthy is still probably not anywhere closer to playing professional football than he was at this point in time last year, given the injury that he had. So, sure, you could sit there and watch and learn and everything else, but he hadn't had a year's full of practice and reps and everything else. But you're also going to a team in Minnesota that's got a lot of offensive weapons, that's got some stability at the coaching position. And, oh, by the way, for Aaron Rodgers, rather, who may have a little level of pettiness in him, wouldn't he love to go back and stick it to the Packers within his own division? I mean, he's probably only got one more year left in this thing. There's a world where I could see him ending up in Minnesota because clearly if Minnesota was committed to Sam Darnold at this point, they would have done a deal with him. Like, I don't think they've closed the door completely, but they've also turned around and said, look, if somebody else wants to pay him top dollar, we're just not going to go there. They didn't go there with Kirk Cousins again the second time. There was no reason to go there again with Sam Darnold, who has a much less proven track record. So the Vikings have an open door here. I think that they would evaluate Rodgers, look at him, and for the most part, again, given everything that Minnesota has and the scheme that they run, Rodgers could be pretty successful there.
When you take a look also with Aaron Rodgers, like the baggage comes with him. We thought it was going to work out in New York. It was dramatically bad. And obviously the first year there in New York wasn't his fault, gets injured a couple plays into the season. Second year actually puts up decent statistics, but the team didn't rally around him. So moving on, let's just say Mark, he picks his new team. Contract expectations. He's made more money than just about every other NFL player in the history of the sport. Is this one where he goes, I want to prove you wrong, 1 year, $5 million? Or does he go, sure, I'll play for you, but let's roll out the carpet with $40+ million a year, which is what my expectations are?
I mean, I don't think you have to pay him as low as $5 million, but if you gave him 20, which is very low for any starting quarterback in this league, I mean, there are backups making 10 for crying out loud. So if you went in there at 18 to 20 million for a 1 year deal, I don't think Rodgers would turn it down. I mean, listen, for all of Aaron Rodgers' flaws, I don't think he's stupid. I don't think he's not aware of where he is at this point in his playing career. I think he understands what he is and where he is and what he's going to be worth. So it will be a 1 year show me deal, but at the rate of around, 18 to 20 million. I don't think he would ever take less than that. There would be no reason for him to. I mean, there's no reason to take backup money unless he's actually going to be a backup, but I don't think that's going to be a scenario.
Yeah, we'll see exactly what Aaron Rodgers decides. We'll see his investment into football. There is still the potential of a retirement. You never know exactly what Rodgers will do in this offseason. Some potential suitors out there. My biggest question, does he want to be in a quarterback battle? Is he going to be able to be named the number one based on the level of play we have seen out of Rodgers the last season, plus even his final year in Green Bay in 2022? Let's talk about Minnesota. You mentioned that as a potential landing spot for Aaron Rodgers. Sam Darnold was the guy there this past year, but the face of the franchise moving forward is certainly J.J. McCarthy. Sam Darnold was not placed under the franchise tag, Zinno, by the Vikings earlier this week, meaning he is fully a free agent. We can talk about how much in just a moment. First question is where? Where do you believe Sam Darnold is playing his NFL football in 2025?
Whoever the last person is without a chair is where Sam Darnold will end up. I mean, I just think everybody understands that the final two games that we saw, the most important two games that we saw from Sam Darnold, was the Jets version of Sam Darnold who showed up. And that should scare the hell out of any GM who's looking to put him onto some sort of deal here. And again, I don't think if you're signing Sam Darnold, it's for more than 2 years anyway. Like at this point, there's no reason, not enough track record to believe that his investment is going to be worthwhile. Like that's just the reality. And again, you can take that as a knock on Sam Darnold, but there's a lot more proof of bad throughout his career than there is the 16 games of good that he gave you in a Vikings uniform. So, and look, the Vikings are kind of wise. Didn't they live that existence already with Case Keenum for 1 year where they had a fantastic year, and then all of a sudden they said, you know what, hey, we're not going to go in this direction again. So I would trust the Vikings' judgment here on this one. I don't know where he plays. I think genuinely whoever is left without a seat at the table when the music stops is going to turn to Sam Darnold and go, here's a 2 year deal, come play quarterback for us kind of deal.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing, too, about Darnold is it's not as if, like, with the arguments were like, well, how can you get Stafford? He's 37 years old, going to be 38 years old. How is that actually going to play out? Like, he's still in his prime and played good football last year until those final two games, Mark, because I always said, imagine if he would have beat Detroit or won a playoff game. There's a real argument that Minnesota's getting rid of J.J. McCarthy, but due to those two games, which were the biggest games, it's not there. Oakland makes a little bit of sense to me, but is there a contender? When I say contender, obviously I don't mean like the Philadelphia Eagles or the Kansas City Chiefs. Who could you see him fitting on that football team, giving them a chance to say, okay, we might not be a playoff team now, but if we get Darnold playing good football, we can be that playoff team, and where he fits in?
I mean, it's tough to say. Like, New Orleans comes to mind a little bit. Like, if they were willing to move off Derek Carr. Could Indianapolis work out if they're not 100% sold on Anthony Richardson? Like, does that feel like if I'm the Raiders, I don't want to go in that direction. I want some semblance of stability going forward. I don't think that's exactly what they're looking for. I mean, again, it's like you look around the landscape of teams that are there. It's really hard to. I mean, could Cleveland go in the Sam Darnold direction if they could afford to make it work, given the amount of money they'll have tied up in Deshaun Watson? All these questions are out there. Again, I think whatever it boils down to, he's going to be at the back of the line when it comes to addressing the quarterback position. I don't think anybody's rushing to the front to go get him.
So I don't know exactly if I agree with that, because I do believe Sam Darnold does not elevate a ceiling of a franchise, but I do believe there will be teams that go out there and pay for him. The Las Vegas Raiders would certainly – go ahead.
I was going to say, there's one more that kind of makes sense, right? Like, here's the thing. If the Tennessee Titans were going to either draft a quarterback or even forego it and go take Abdul Carter, would it make sense to bring Sam Darnold in and bring some stability? Yeah, I think that's a situation that could work for a year or two until they figure out exactly what they want to do. Because, look, it doesn't matter what quarterback they draft. It doesn't matter who they draft. Guess what? I can tell you, Tennessee's not going to the playoffs next year. So whatever they do for this draft and whatever they do this year is not going to have any net outcome being one step closer to being in the playoffs. They're still 2 or 3 years away.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I still think the Titans will look to draft a quarterback with that number 1 overall pick. If they do not and they trade out, then Sam Darnold becomes a part of it. But we'll know very quickly if Tennessee makes a move on Darnold what their plans are for the first overall pick, as that legal tampering window does begin on Monday afternoon. Sam Darnold's not going to make a mediocre team a playoff contender, a playoff team into a conference championship frontrunner. Can he provide a stable footing for a team that needs it, like the Raiders? Perhaps. Can he be that guy in Indianapolis to challenge Anthony Richardson? Perhaps. That we shall see. Let's get the mouth in the South breaking down college basketball next.
Which is a great place to be. Are you in the locker room, like you're giving like the Any Given Sunday Inches Al Pacino speech? Are we there yet?
Oh yeah, I think we've been there. We're gonna have a long talk with Rob today about the 99-199 issue from last week. Like I just don't get how he is still employed. We gotta talk to ownership about that one.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on sports betting, is it possible that New York will actually lower their taxes? That's surprising.
The question is, of course, what sports books could go there. I mean, we're already at 9 that are the biggest ones out there in the market. So, I mean, who are you really missing?
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember when everyone was upset about NIL? You know what NIL did? Make sure Cooper Flagg wasn't playing with the G League Ignite. That's good for us. That's good for college basketball. When the best players are actually playing college basketball.
You're going to get battle tested. And it doesn't matter, Kevin, if you're at home or on the road. If you don't come ready to play in the SEC, you're going home with an L.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Thursday on the Early Line, Mark Zinno becomes the mouth in the South because we start with SEC basketball in the final week at the high major level in men's college hoops during conference tournament week, fully picking up on this Thursday as well. Zinno, let's look back on a Wednesday night. Huge top 10 tilt in T-Town in Tuscaloosa between 7th-ranked Alabama and number 5 Florida. And as the Gators have proven time and again this year, they'll be a slight underdog on the road and win outright. High-scoring game in Coleman Coliseum, 99-94. The victory for UF outright as a 3.5-point underdog. What did the performance last night, Mark Zinno, with all of the stakes, two potential teams out of the SEC hunting down a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, show you about both programs here in the month of March?
Well, Florida's a Final Four team. They're a national championship contender at this point. They are so good on both ends of the floor. They have the shooting and the defense to be able to do this thing. I don't even know that the draw necessarily matters. I mean, there's an argument to say you can match up Florida against anybody in the country, and they are going to be more than competitive and be able to win the game and have a chance to win the game late. So that's a team right now that should scare the ever-living you-know-what out of everybody because that's how competent and good they are on both ends. For Alabama, look, we know what they are and we know what they're not. And a lot of it is game script. And if you look at the flow of what happened last night, that was a game of back and forth runs. I mean, if you go, Florida led 15-8. Then Alabama was up 19-15. Then Florida was up 27-23. We get past halftime. We have Alabama up 52-47. And then all of a sudden, Florida took a lead and never looked back when it was all said and done. So that's the way Alabama plays. That's just the kind of style of game they're going to get into, and they're going to do everything they can to outscore you at the end of it and outlast you and outshoot you. As long as Alabama continues to make threes at a rate that is unsustainable for most teams to keep up, they're going to be in a good situation. But when they play a legitimate defense, they're going to have some problems here. And Alabama playing catch-up is not a good script. Alabama has to get themselves out in front and force you to chase them. That's when they're most effective, not when they're trying to play catch-up against a better defense.
Those two teams last night certainly going to be in March Madness. But before we get to March Madness, we get to Arch Madness, which gets underway. The Missouri Valley Conference, the WCC. Any looks from Arch Madness, which gets underway at 1 o'clock Eastern this afternoon today. Drake plus 115 price, Bradley plus 330. How about the little conferences? Show some respect here, Mark. Who you got?
I would go Bradley. I think they're one of the more complete teams within the Missouri Valley. Yeah. I just kind of I look at them at both ends of the floor, and I feel like that's a team that has the shooting necessary to win the tournament. And that's really what it boils down to for me. You talk about Bradley's three-point shooting, second best in the conference. That's always really what's kind of going to highlight my sort of angle when I look at this thing. And they're top 4 in both offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency in the conference. What was the other conference we were talking about? I'm sorry, it slipped my mind while I was talking.
WCC.
DRS gift award.
Come on,
so many things.
The disrespect.
WCC. The guy.
I really, really want to take San Francisco. The problem is that they're going to have to play Gonzaga. They can't beat Gonzaga. Like, I would give San Francisco a better chance to beat St. Mary's than I would Gonzaga. But the way the bracket sets up with Gonzaga being the 2 and San Fran being the 3, they're going to have to see each other. And for whatever – have you seen the numbers? Gonzaga is 52-4 against San Francisco all time. 52-4. Like, that's beyond one-sided at this point. So I would love to be able to take San Francisco. But this is not the same Gonzaga team. I don't feel like this is the same Gonzaga team we've seen from years ago. They wouldn't get my money. It would be St. Mary's.
I would bet on St. Mary's as well. Both DRS and I said that as we look at the prices, plus 150 for a Zags team, not the 1 seed, but the minus money favorite. They do play San Francisco. Santa Clara is the 4 seed, a potential bid stealer out there to take on St. Mary's and the Gales in the WCC tournament. When you look at Bradley, best three-point shooting team in the country, nearly 41%, 40.9 from 3, and highly effective are the Braves, 57.2%, 6th most effective field goal percentage around college basketball. That will get interesting if Drake does not win Arch Madness. Are the Bulldogs, from an at-large perspective, deserving of a nod? I would say so, unless the committee continuously wants to show that mid-major teams just can't snuff it against the high major, which I disagree with wholeheartedly, because Drake, the only team in the country undefeated in quad 1 and quad 2 games. Sure, only 5, but they are perfect at 5-0. We're bouncing all around here in this segment. So let's talk national championship odds. And before we talk about teams to highlight, I want your thought process. We're here early in March. We're about to be at the end of the regular season at the high major level. Conference tournaments next week. Is this your time to put in a wager, or have we waited too long that the value is no longer there, and thus you want to see how the actual bracket lays out in just about 10 days on Selection Sunday?
No, I don't think it's too late. Again, if you're holding a Duke ticket at anything 3-1 or better, I don't think you're in a bad shape at all. I want that ticket in my hand at this point in time. Now, again, I've said repeatedly, we don't know what Duke is against other competition because the ACC's had a down year, but I'm not upset at that ticket. Certainly not upset about a Florida ticket. I look at a team, again, I've talked about my concerns about St. John to Michigan State. The other bet that I really like that's not national championship, I like Maryland to make the Final Four. I think Maryland, when about the draw, because the draw to win the whole thing matters, but to get to the Final Four, I don't see Maryland losing prior to the Sweet 16, and I think that they are going to be in an Elite 8 game right there, and that's really when it matters. When I talk about Maryland, a team to win the whole thing, it's the Elite 8 matchup, the first Final Four game, and the national championship, where it's 3 elite teams in a row that would give me pause for a team like Maryland. But for them to win 4 games to get to a Final Four, I think is a high probability number. And given that they're not even 20-1 to win the title, you're going to get a juicy number on them getting to the Final Four themselves.
Yes, you certainly are. The Terps have some great metrics. They look the part of a team that can make a deep run in the big dance. Do they have the coaching advantages necessary, led by Kevin Willard, to do just that? A little bit more around college basketball with Mark Zinno to end out this second hour. Up next, live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid.
Philadelphia 76ers, they tried to play 2 different things. They tried to play contender, and they tried to play protect Joel Embiid. It wasn't doing Joel Embiid any good. This goes back to what I've talked about numerous times on this network. Why did they let him play in the first place? Why was he on the Olympic team? I mean, we looked at it last year in the playoffs against the Knicks. The damn kid was on one leg.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one, Steve?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid, rounding out our second hour with the one, the only, the non-jacket wearing Mark Zinno. So, Zinno, on this Thursday, as we get everybody ready deeper into conference tournament week, you are certainly that, my friend. We've got 7 weekdays that remain on the men's side in conference tournament weeks, if you will, in college hoops. As we've alluded to, starting today in Arch Madness, MVC tournament, we've got afternoon basketball in 6 of the 7. Games starting at latest 1 p.m. Eastern time and often 11 a.m., 11:30 a.m., noon Eastern time over these next 6 days. Let's go back to the national championship prices. Zinno, you talked about a couple of value spots that you like. And, of course, the metrics necessary to make a deep run in the madness that is March. How do you look at the favorites at the top? Auburn and Duke, co-favorites now at a plus 340 price. Zinno, if I were to give you a Final Four bet on either the Tigers or the Blue Devils making the Final Four, one of those two teams taking one of the 4 spots in San Antonio, would you think that the yes was juiced? Would you bet on either Auburn and or Duke getting to the Final Four?
Yes, I would take the yes. I mean, look, you got the 2 best players in the country in Broom and Flag for Auburn and Duke, respectively, on the floor. And those are the guys that are going to have to kind of be those critical guys to get them through some tough spots going forward. But again, I think when you look at it, those 2 teams are on a collision course to meet each other at some point in time in the Final Four or in the national championship game. You talk about the metrics, right? I mean, both of them, you're talking about teams that are Duke is top 5 in both offensive and defensive rating. Auburn's the number 1 offense in the country, and defensive rating is 14th in KenPom. So they fit those metrics of being top 20 offensive, top 20 defense, top 20 defensively when it comes to the metrics. But again, if you're going to give me Duke and Auburn versus the field to win the national title, in that case, I'd take the field just to get to the Final Four. Obviously both of these teams, I think, are very capable of doing it.
If we do look at those graphics there and say the national champions, look, a lot of people are deserving to be up there. Price points appropriate. We'll get to that in a moment. But contender, pretender for this one team for me, for you, St. John's. You see them at 25-1 listed there. Nice story coming out of the Big East. First time in a long time they won the regular season crown in the Big East. Are they a contender for you, Mark, or a pretender?
I mean, did you do this to break my heart because I'm a Johnny's fan and I grew up in the Ron Artest days and the Boo Harvey days and the Mark Jackson days of
Mullen days
basketball? I was a little bit young for the Mullen days. So that was a little bit before. I was more Mark Jackson than Mullen. Didn't they play together?
Play with Mark Jackson?
I think so, but that's the one I remember. I don't remember Mullen. I remember Mark Jackson. More popular in New York.
I remember Mullen. Tough scene.
I don't know. I was a short guy. I like point guards. I didn't relate to big people. Anyway, so here's the thing about St. John's, and I've said this repeatedly. I think they're pretenders because what's going to happen here with St. John's is eventually they're going to meet somebody here in the second round or the Sweet 16 that's going to come out of the gate and they're just going to be flat out making shots. Right? Like that happens from time to time. It doesn't matter how good a defense you play, shots just fall. And St. John's is going to find themselves, they're going to look up at the scoreboard by the 12-minute timeout, and it's going to be a 21-7 game. And they're going to be like, oh my God, how are we down 14 points so quick? The only way to erase that lead is one of 2 ways. You have to play enough lockdown defense over the course of the next whatever minutes are left and hold that team from scoring again for them to get back in it. Or you got to be able to make threes. And that's something St. John's can't do. period. And like, that's a problem when you're a bad 3-point shooting team. It's the same problem for Michigan State. If you get them out of their game script and you get them away from being able to dictate the tempo and pacing the game defensively, then will have a problem playing catch up unless their defense becomes lockdown and does the work. They don't have an offense that's good enough to play catch up because they can't shoot threes.
The only thing that then you could argue, right, is that very few teams have been able to get Michigan State and St. John's out of their games so far this year. But that will be key, right? The matchups that will dictate your path through the tournament, your run through the bracket, maybe as important, if not more important, than how good of a basketball team you are. Because it is still a tournament. It is a one-game scenario where you have to be at your best for 40 minutes to make sure that you can contend for a Final Four spot in a national championship. Mark Zinno, always a good time, my friend, here on the early line with you on the show. We thank you very much, as always. I thought the sweater looked great for what it's worth.
Let's see what management thinks.
Listen, I'm hearing not so great things. Hour number 3, our third and final. That's up next on the early line.